The infamous legacy of E.T., how Spielberg's classic inspired the worst video game ever. New Line Cinema. As Hollywood continues to explore new avenues for blockbuster hits, the spotlight has shifted from the superhero genre to the vibrant world of video games. And guess what? This transition is proving to be a goldmine. While we've seen some spectacular flops, like the colossal bomb Borderlands in 2024, the success of films like Minecraft, which dominated the box office in 2025, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie, now one of the top 20 films of all time, shows that video games are the next big thing in cinematic adaptations. For years, the tables were turned. Hollywood would create the intellectual property, and video game developers would scramble to turn those films into playable experiences. Unfortunately, this often resulted in a string of disappointing games that fans had come to expect would be subpar. But there's one game that stands out as the poster child for this trend of failure: E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, for the Atari 2600. This game has earned its notorious reputation since its release in 1982. But is it really as bad as everyone says? The answer is a bit more nuanced. Howard Scott Warshaw, the game designer behind E.T., opened up about the rushed development process that contributed to its infamous status. Interestingly, Warshaw was also behind the very first video game adaptation of a movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which Spielberg loved. So, when it came time to adapt E.T., Spielberg personally asked Warshaw to take on the project. However, there was a hiccup. It took a while for Atari and Spielberg to finalize the legal agreements. E.T. hit theaters on June 11, 1982, and quickly became a beloved classic, boasting a near-perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes. But it wasn't until late July that the deal was struck, and Atari's CEO reached out to Warshaw, giving him a mere 5 weeks to create the game in time for the holiday season. Warshaw, brimming with youthful confidence, accepted the challenge, saying, "I believed I could pull it off. I mean, the hubris of it." The game was designed around a key plot point where E.T. collects parts to build a communicator to phone home. However, when Spielberg first saw the game, he seemed less than impressed, quipping, "Couldn't you just do something like Pac-Man?" Those words stung, but in hindsight, Spielberg might have been onto something as E.T. The Extra-Terrestrial became synonymous with terrible video game adaptations. While Spielberg's films often capture the essence of wonder, E.T., the game failed to evoke any of that magic. Instead, it quickly earned the title of the worst video game ever made, a reputation it still holds today. To make matters worse, Atari was struggling financially around the same time, leading to the narrative that this game single-handedly crashed the video game industry. While that's an exaggeration, it certainly contributed to the game's troubled legacy. An urban legend even emerged claiming that Atari buried unsold E.T. cartridges in a landfill, which turned out to be partially true when some were discovered in 2014. However, it was revealed that Atari was simply disposing of excess stock after closing its Texas manufacturing plant. Looking back, it's clear that the E.T. game could have benefited from following Spielberg's suggestion to emulate Pac-Man. The adaptation is not fondly remembered, and it's easy to see why. The game featured a confusing wraparound level design, where players would navigate through various screens only to end up back where they started. E.T. also frequently fell into frustrating pits, which added to the overall annoyance. Warshaw defended this design choice, stating, "There's a difference between frustration and disorientation. Video games are all about frustration. It's okay to frustrate a user, but you don't want to disorient the user." Unfortunately, E.T. did just that. Critics were not impressed, and while some reviews from the time were lukewarm, the game was voted the second worst Atari program of 1983 by readers of Softline. Modern critics have been even harsher, solidifying its status as the worst video game adaptation ever, though other contenders like the disastrous Demolition Man game or the chaotic Gilligan's Island game certainly have their own claims to that dubious title.